Hey guys, how you doing today? Just finished watching the throne speech today. I had a day off, so I took the time to watch the throne speech. And it ended up kind of being exactly as I expected, which is I had hoped that the Trudeau government would actually see the writing on the wall and pass and announce their support for legislation that would actually help the populace and actually work. But instead, they've doubled down on failed capitalist projects and systems that are not going to help anybody and just funnel money into the big pile of gold that the corporate oligarchs are hoarding and keeping from the rest of the populace, right? Um, Meanwhile, the media is doing a really excellent job of pretending like the throne speech was meaningful for Canadians and meaningful for workers. Um, but at the end of the day, this throne speech was just a major handout and a major gift to capitalist and corporate interests, uh, proving once again that the Liberals are cowards, not interested in actually helping anyone, not interested in actually providing the necessary transition and the necessary protection that we need, not from the COVID-19 crisis, but from the capitalist crisis that we are continuously facing. Um, the in in a moment when the government should have been announcing its support for a basic income, which would be supports for people, they announce a further expansion of the wage subsidy program, which is essentially a handout to large corporate businesses. That now we are entering a period of Canadian fascism because one of the the defining characteristic, right? The defining characteristic of fascism is the merger of the government and the business class. Mussolini outright said that that was the case. That fascism is better to be called corporatism because it is the merger of business and government. And a wage subsidy in order to keep businesses open, right? As if giving money to the populace would somehow lead to business closures, is a step in that direction, right? It is businesses being subsidized directly by government spending. And I'm completely opposed to that. I think that that is a desperate move by a capitalist class that is losing credibility by the moment. The Instead of actually taking that money and giving it to people who will then spend it in the economy and then further grow that economy, letting the businesses who the populace does not support fail, and the businesses that the populace does support continue. They are simply going to prop up corporate businesses. So this ends up being just a massive gift to corporate capitalism as it continues to abandon us and as it continues to collapse around us. The And I also think the other huge piece of news is that Trudeau's government is not doing what it needs to do in terms of a green economy, right? I've been saying over and over on this channel, we need to be transitioning to a war economy. We need to be seizing control of the universities and the school system in order to funnel all energy and all thought towards a green economy, green research. The Trudeau government, of course, is instead doing just big corporate handouts to capitalist businesses, which have no incentive whatsoever to actually produce. And we've seen over and over again are more than willing to completely lie about what it is they're doing, what it is they're creating. They'll absolutely present like, oh, hey, here's a green solution, and that green solution is, clear cutting trees, right? Oh, this is a green solution. We've got a solar panel field that actually ends up being a natural gas plant. Capitalists are not going to help us. They're not going to save us. And the Trudeau government, in the throne speech, basically announced corporate gifts, full handouts for businesses that are working towards research and development of green technology. And of course, these businesses are going to do nothing of the sort. They're not interested in that. We need to actually be funding real resources towards the problem, and instead we're just going to hand money to a bunch of billionaires who are just going to walk away from the table when the food shortages begin, when the crises begin to actually hit the populace. The capitalist class will vanish and abandon us to our fate. And the Trudeau government has done absolutely nothing in this throne speech to actually prevent that. And the media, in my view, is incredibly culpable here, because they're either illiterate or stupid, or both. Like, they very quickly jump to, oh wow, lots of big changes, lots of big things, instead of actually taking a skeptical eye and being like, all of this stuff is just gifts for corporate, like, handouts. All it's going to do is funnel money from the government and put it into the pockets of big business for no gains. We will see nothing out of it. And the things that we do see are just going to be fabricated nonsense. The one thing they did announce that may matter to some small degree for workers is the reform of the EI system. So the Liberals have made it very clear that they don't give a shit about the poor. They don't give a shit about people who have already been abandoned by capitalism, right? Like, the capitalists will happily abandon people to homelessness and poverty, and they don't give a shit about that. They throw small little tokens, so like buying, a couple of hotels and motels instead of forcing condo corporations to actually rent or sell the empty spaces they have, instead of putting massive penalties on foreign buyers. No, we're just gonna throw a couple of pennies at this problem and pretend like it mattered. And reform of EI is exactly like that, right? It's along the same lines as Obamacare was in the United States, right? It allowed the Obama administration to claim that it was doing something radical to change its healthcare system, when in reality it was like a weak idea from the 90s that got phased in on a federal level and still plunges people into plenty of debt. And this EI scheme is going to be exactly the same thing, right? It's going to allow hyper-conservatives to pretend like a progressive agenda has been set, when the reality is this is like I'd say this is a firm, like, everything that got announced in that throne speech, I would say is firmly right-wing. I don't think there's a single left-wing idea in that throne speech. Not even a centrist idea, like, not even very simple, clean ideas. Certainly not something like a basic income, which I think is ultimately necessary if you want to start taking major issues seriously, which the Trudeau government does not. And I was willing to kind of let them show that they were willing to make intelligent decisions that would help the populace and face the collapsing crisis of capitalism directly head on. I was willing to give them that shot with this throne speech, but no longer. These guys are basically right-wingers. They're not interested in centrist politics. They're certainly not interested in leftist politics, right? These guys are essentially conservatives. And so at this stage in the game, I don't see any difference between voting between the conservatives and the liberals any longer. I think that the choice between them is a non-choice. If you want to vote for Aaron O'Toole, you might as well, because you're getting the same thing out of him that you are going to get out of Justin Trudeau. So I don't think there's a difference between the Liberals and the Conservatives anymore. They had their chance here on this particular throne speech and failed pretty mightily, actually. Like, everything I just heard might as well have just been come out of the Harper government, honestly. Like, I don't think that the Harper government would have acted much differently in these circumstances, and the Trudeau Liberals had their opportunity to actually put forward a progressive agenda, and instead of doing that, they basically put forward the conservative agenda. subsidies to businesses, subsidies for if you invest in green energy, subsidies for businesses on that. No actual solutions, no actual like we didn't land people on the moon through government subsidies, right? Like that's not how that happened. We landed people on the moon by creating a massive government program. And it's like the same story with things like the Avro Arrow here in Canada. Like it's the same thing with our universal healthcare system. We didn't do that by putting subsidies into businesses. We did that by creating government programs, funding them appropriately, and attracting the best and the brightest in Canada in order to make that happen. And we could do that again through our university systems, through our school systems. But instead of that, we're just going to throw money at billionaires and beg them to solve the problem, and the billionaires will pocket the money and leave. And that's what we're going to see. Because these Trudeau liberals are not liberal, even by their own definition of liberalism, right? I'd say that they are basically conservatives. And to the right of them are these are what's called conservatives, but have been flirting more and more with fascism recently. So that's the state of our politics as far as I'm concerned. Now the question becomes, does the NDP and Jagmeet Singh actually support this? Politically speaking, Jagmeet Singh is essentially a centrist, right? I've seen nothing out of him that convinces me he is actually a left-wing progressive. I've seen nothing out of him that convinces me that he actually understands the difficult subjects like the basic income, right? But this is an opportunity for the NDP to actually say whether or not they want to put their support behind essentially a conservative agenda, right? Big bailouts for business, big subsidies for business, very little, next to nothing for the actual populace. This EI reform thing is actually going to end up being less beneficial for Canadians who need support, right? People who are getting enough support to be able to pay their bills are going to be forced into a position where they're going to have to seek work or take on debt, or and there's just no bones about it, right? Like, I mean, unemployment is skyrocketing, precarious work is skyrocketing, and the government's response to that is, oh, we're going to give money to billionaires and let them pocket that money, and we'll also reform the EI system for workers that are currently enslaved by the capitalist system, but we're not actually going to help anybody who's already been abandoned by capitalism, because essentially we're right-wing conservatives, getting more and more conservative by the day. And fuck those people, right? If they can't sell themselves to a billionaire-dominated market, then they might as well just go and die. So I was hoping for something for the, 6 or 7 homeless people on my block that I see almost every single day. I was hoping that something would happen to help those people out, but instead of that, we got this limp nonsense and a media that is completely complicit and lazy, and pretending like this is some sort of wonderful, oh wow, what big promises. Yeah, big promises to billionaires, like big promises to the corporate class. Absolutely nothing for the populace, like nothing serious, right? Like, of course they're going to try to make sure that everybody's got medical gear, because you got to look out for the human stock, right? Like, you got to make sure that the slaves that you're throwing into the front line so that the billionaire class can make more money will be willing to continue doing that and have masks and have protective gear so the disease doesn't spread into the higher classes, which is what they actually care about. So we'll see. Now the step is, does Jagmeet Singh support the budget that comes out? I hope he does not. I'm more than willing to go to election. I think that the Liberals had a real opportunity here to show that they actually cared about Canadians. They don't. They care about themselves, and they care about the billionaire class. Unfortunately now, the media is so heavily propagandized the populace, and the populace is so gullible and willing to just be spoon-fed these overt and lies, that people are going to say, like, oh, well, the media is saying so much got promised, and the media is saying that things are going to get better, and the media is saying, and the media is saying, and the media is just totally full of shit. Like, they're totally full of shit. What we're seeing in front of us is a major corporate bailout, a major corporate handout to increase the wealth of corporate power. And the average citizens are basically just being told, go to work or die. That's essentially what we're being told. And as we go into this second wave, like, and I've said it over and over again, right? Like, we are going to be dealing with further collapses of capitalism because that's the way that capitalism is designed. Capitalism is designed to collapse. It collapses on purpose by its structure. And the Trudeau government has done absolutely nothing to ameliorate that. It's done absolutely nothing to ameliorate the climate crisis. It's done absolutely nothing. I said in a previous video that they might be like, capitalism is a shambling zombie corpse, and the Trudeau government might have responsibility for like a pinky of that corpse being knocked off. Now it's even less. Like, they're actually actively trying to keep the corpse going, right? Like, they're acting as necromancers. They're not acting as clerics, you know, to put it in fantasy terms. They're not trying to expunge the evil. They're trying to prop the evil up. And yeah, I have no support for the Liberals left. They're essentially right-wing conservatives. You might as well actually vote for conservatives, because you're going to get the same stuff. It's going to be the same. Okay. That's my thoughts on the throne speech. I think it's the total abandonment of working class Canadians. I think that there's no reason to vote for the Liberals anymore. I think that they don't deserve our support. I think that we should be looking to other political parties like the NDP or the Greens. Unless you're actually a right-wing conservative and you're caught in that delusion, then you might as well vote conservative, because the Liberals no longer have a place in our politics. They aren't actually progressive. They aren't actually putting forward an agenda to help anyone except corporations. They're trying to prop up a capitalist system that is dying and we will have to deal with very shortly. And they're doing absolutely nothing to prevent further climate change catastrophe. So a lame duck, limp government that's not willing to actually seize the moment and not actually willing to help anybody. But boy, I'm sure Justin Trudeau, when he's finally out of office, he'll get lots of offers to sit on lots of boards, which is what he cares about, and that's all he cares about. He'll sit on some board and earn a six-figure paycheck for, you know, chiming in every so often with his opinion. But at the end of the day, the Trudeau government's just going to go down in history. Like, they're less relevant than the Harper government was. Like, the Harper government actually did do things, right? They passed a child care benefit. They formed a ton of trade deals across the world, right, to get us away from fully being in the thrall of America. Like, the Harper government did actually do things. These Liberals have done fuck all. And all of the legislation that they're going to pass is basically just going to funnel money into a crisis to make it worse. And we'll be back to exactly where we're at very shortly. So we'll see what the NDP do. We'll see if they have the courage to actually formulate this narrative and actually say to the Trudeau government, sorry, you were supposed to pass a left-wing agenda, not a far-right agenda. Yeah. All right. That's the end of me, guys. Go say hi to your neighbors. Good luck.